Welcome to Doug's RV14 build. In this episode, we're going to demonstrate that in test number 1 of this tank, we had a small leak between the back baffle plate and the fuel tank skin, and we were successfully able to seal that up and stop the leak. To perform a pressure test of my right tank, I've set up a manometer with colored water, and I have just enough hose that when I set it up and I've got zero pressure in the tank, it's at 5.5 inch water column. So if I were to add 1 psi of water to the tank, I would have to get that water column to reach 32.5 inches to equal 1 psi, because 27 inches is equal to 1 psi. So let's get started, and we're going to add some pressure to the tank. So there's our 32.5, which is equivalent to 27 inches of water column. I should point out at this time that 1 psi of pressure is actually equal to about 27.7 inches of water column. During the original test, I found a small leak between the back baffle plate and the tank skin. To repair the leak, I drew a vacuum of 1 psi on the tank and applied Loctite 920 to the area where the leak was. The vacuum helped to draw or wick the Loctite into the leak. As I continued to apply the Loctite 920, I turned off the vacuum and continued to apply Loctite 920 until it stopped filling the leak. Then I let the tank set for 24 hours overnight to make sure that the Loctite dried, pressurized the tank to 1 psi, and then retested the area with our soapy water, and there was no leak found at all. Time to retest the entire tank. You'll notice that the air is not quite holding, and that is because where the hose slips on to the, if you can see that, there's an air bubble, kind of hard to see. You'll see when it bursts. It's growing. So the only leak we have is right here where the hose goes over the fitting. So we've soaped the entire tank, all the rivets, all the joints, and I have no bubbles coming up from the soap, and I've got a very, very slow leak, and that is where the hose goes to the fitting. So I'm satisfied that this tank has no leaks on it, and we're gonna move ahead with the project. After completing the test, I decided I needed to retest the tanks to show zero leakage. I decided to perform another pressure test. Since the last test wouldn't hold pressure because of a small leak where the pressure line connected to the fitting. To prevent the line leaking at the fitting, I used some 3M marine adhesive sealant between the fitting and the hose and let dry overnight. Okay, we're going to start off this pressure test, and on the water column I've got a little over 28 inches of water column, and we're going to back up here, and I'm going to add pressure so that we get about 1 psi, or about 27.7 inches of water column. There we go. So you can't probably see that on the camera, but it is certainly going down as the pressure in the tank increases. We'll let it sit for at least 10 minutes. It's the standard that I'm used to. And presently, there's where the water level is. Nice thing about using the water manometer is that there's no way that you'd be able to overpressurize the tank, as the end of the manometer is open to atmosphere. And it would take about half a pound in the tank of overpressurization to push the water up the line and out to atmosphere, thereby preventing overpressurization. So that's one good thing I like using about this, as opposed to the balloon. This is certainly, I believe, to be much more accurate. You'll be able to see if there's any pressure loss at all in inches of water, as opposed to a balloon, which could be deflating slightly and you wouldn't be able to see it. I'm not sure, I haven't tried that method. So after a little under 20 minutes of pressure testing the tank at 1 psi, we can see that there are no leaks and have had a successful test.